Hey y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and this is my Edmonds 98020 real estate market update for July 2022. As I mentioned last month, we're back in the saddle doing these Edmonds market updates, and these are just so near and dear to my heart that I gotta keep doing them. So last month, I think as we're looking at the stats, we're seeing a lot of new homes coming on the market, and we're seeing not a big difference in sales. So last spring, we were seeing 31 new houses on the market in June 2021 and 26 sales, 39 closings, okay? So just hardly even able to keep up with the houses. So that equated to 0.6 months of supply. This last month, in June 2022, 36 new listings, 14 sales, okay? So we had 12 fewer sales and we had 5 new listings, more new listings. So essentially, we're just not keeping pace now with the new listings, and so inventory is starting to build. And what that means for you as a homeowner is that your house is not going to have as much competition any longer, at least in the current market. If there are other buyers out there, when you put your house on the market, there's just more options for those buyers to consider. And what we're seeing right now, the big drop off from 26 to 14 this year as far as pending sales, we're just seeing fewer buyers interested in making a purchase at this point in time. Last year, if you look back at May, so when we talked about May's update, we had 13 pending sales in May, 14 in June. So what we're just seeing is a couple months now in a row of fewer and fewer pending sales, but the amount of homes coming on the market is continuing to increase. I don't know if that's some FOMO for sellers. Last year we were experiencing, or the last few years, we've been experiencing this fear of missing out for buyers. It's possible we'll see that on the seller side. I'm going to be a little surprised if we do, just because of how high interest rates are right now. If you're somebody selling, if you got to buy something else, that's a tough trade if you have a really low interest rate right now. But I think there are going to be some people maybe that will sell because they want to try to capitalize on where the market is. They don't want to miss out. And certainly we're at, I think, the top of the market for the time being, and have been slowly seeing the market shift over these past few months. And if you're following along on a monthly basis, you'll see that we're starting to see some of those trends. So last month, 0.8 months of supply. So still super, super tight. Not a lot of houses for all the buyers. This last month, 1.7 months of supply as we ended the month. So we had 14 houses on the market last month at the end of the month, 27 at the end of the month this month, excuse me. So last month we had 14 houses on the market at the end of the month. Now we have 27 houses on the market. And we only had 14 go pending, as we saw earlier in the month. So the activity has been slowing down on the buyer side, but we're starting to see that accumulation of inventory. So that just means that there's less competition, some price reductions, fairly normal to see. Last week in Edmonds, we saw 10 new listings in 98020, 7 price reductions. So a lot of the new listings are seeing price reductions. And again, some of those price reductions are after a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks on the market. But houses are still selling relatively quickly. So the days on market, still 8 days on market. And that was the same as last year. So the average days on market is similar. But I think we're seeing houses selling for a little below asking price. And we're seeing those price reductions, as we've talked about, to help encourage those sales. So I think it's a little bit of a moving target as we try to figure out exactly what the values are right now, because homes are ultimately worth what someone is willing to sell for and someone is willing to buy for. And previously, the last maybe 3-4 months ago, every house in Edmonds was selling for 15 to 18% over asking price, especially in 98020. But what we've seen recently here, this last month, 3.4% over asking price, which is still great, right? There are still houses selling over asking price for sure, maybe even after a price reduction. So I think these numbers get a little skewed. If you listed your house for $1 million and then dropped it to $900,000 and sold for $930,000, you sold your house for over asking price, but you didn't really. So I think that's what we're starting to see a little bit here. Whereas last year, you listed for $1 million, you sold for 1.1, and you sold for 10% over asking price. So that's, I think what we're seeing is this, I think it's a little inflated to think that we're selling houses over asking price. I would think if we were to take a true average of original list prices, probably right around asking price or maybe even slightly below. So it'll take a few months, I think, for that to level off. But I think expectation-wise, if you are considering selling, the market is different now than it was 3-4 months ago. And I think your neighbor might have sold for more than what you'll be able to sell for now, but still a great time to sell your house. Just have to have the proper expectations, right? And it might take 2 to 4 weeks instead of selling immediately. I think median sales price last year though, right? The good news, 1.1 million in 98020 last June, 1.2 million this year, okay? That's a 9.1% jump. So not bad. So even if you waited, even though the market wasn't as hot, still got 9.1% more on average than the houses last year. Average sales price, so we talked about median, average, 2 different ways to kind of find the average, right? Middle number is the median. 1.203, 167, average sales price last year, 1.364, 926, okay? 13.4% jump to the average. So there were some houses pulling that up. The median was 9.1% jump, 13.4% on the average. So I think that's the good news. So I'm talking about the market shifting, things changing, but if you are selling, you're still selling for a lot more, even than last year when the market was super, super hot. Now, earlier in the year, again, housing prices were really hot. And I think next year, when we look at the data, right, when we look at next February, March, we might see that houses are selling for less than what people were paying this last year. So 2023 over 2022, we may be talking about negative numbers, but right now, we're still talking about positive numbers. So I think that's good for you if you're thinking about selling. It should be an encouragement to you. I think condos in Edmonds, 98020 specifically, we don't have a ton of condos, but as I'm looking at the data here, pretty much 6 new listings, 8 pending sales, 7 closings, 7 days on market. Median sales price is up 34.6% year over year. So we haven't really been seeing this inventory building up. I think last month we had 1 condo on the market, 4 this month on the market. So we went from 0.1 month to 0.5 months of supply. Whew. But still, houses selling, or condos, selling over asking price. About 700,000 median sales price, 705, 571 was the average sales price for a condo in Edmonds. And again, up significantly from last year when we were in the 5s. So if you've got a condo, again, you've got a lot of additional appreciation. I think the housing market, there's a lot more homes, residential homes coming on the market. So there's been a little bit of a lessening of the competition. But looking at last year, it's not looking as different on the condo side. So I think overall, Edmonds and 98020 specifically has been slowing down and cooling, definitely seeing houses sitting on the market. I wouldn't panic. I think that's a normal part of real estate, especially this time of year. It's also okay for houses to take more than 4 to 7 days to sell. So I think we're in a healthier market right now. I think buyers have a lot more opportunity right now. If you've found yourself in a situation where you weren't able to compete, maybe you didn't want to compete, and maybe you didn't even want to pay the prices and the premiums that some of your friends were paying to get a house, I think right now you have an opportunity potentially to get a house for maybe 10% less than what your neighbors paid, maybe 15. It really depends on the location, but we are seeing houses sitting and we are seeing price reductions. And some of them are 10, 15% in nature. So I think as a buyer, this is your opportunity to start putting feelers out, maybe jumping back in if you were taking a break. And I think for sellers, again, it's still a good time to sell for you, but it's not going to be quite as competitive as what your neighbors experienced. Thanks so much for watching my 98020 Edmonds Real Estate Market Update. If you want to see these updates on a regular basis, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you want to talk more about your situation, maybe you have a home to sell in Edmonds or you want to buy somewhere in the area, please feel free to reach out.